Okay, I am back for more Odinmade Hero. The stream where I learned from Casey Muratori over here, as he streams Handmade Hero in the past and teaches us how to make a game from scratch. I am going to try and burn through the code today. I think it's another code-heavy day, if I'm not mistaken. And we've got some errands to run after I wrap up the stream, so I just want to get that done as soon as I can so that we can get those errands done. But when we wrapped up yesterday, and also I fixed my my chat, so it shouldn't be broken anymore. That's good. Knock that off my to-do list. So yeah, yesterday we actually wrapped up the stream with a bug, and it seemed really strange because everything was working great right up until we were trying to calculate this offset from the camera that the entity's new high frequency position would take. And you know, I said that, and I was really feeling sluggish at the end of yesterday's stream, so I was saying, you know, I bet it's a really silly change or a really silly bug, because it's usually once I get to that point that I just start making really bad mistakes. And lo and behold, we had a comparison here that was wrong. We were asking if the entity's high frequency position at the x coordinate was greater than this value, which would be at the left side of the screen, and it is obviously wrong. This should be less than. So if we redo that, we won't have that bug anymore. And so a couple other things happened during the Q&A as well. For yesterday, we replaced that yellow rectangle that the dude was standing on top of with this little circle, and we can also do this little jump, which is kind of neat, and the circle kind of loses opacity, you know, as the hero jumps higher. That little shadow just kind of fades away. And the other thing that I needed to test was that the collision detection between the players is working right, and it looks like it is. You know, we can just kind of glide nicely around the dude, and vice versa. So we're all good. We're all set to go ahead and kick today off. I think we're just going to keep on working this new understanding of entities, and Casey's going to show us how to add some walls in here, some trees, I guess. We're going to start adding some trees, I think, around the border of our tile map. So like I said, we'll just try and burn through this code, and if all goes well, maybe I'll even have a little bit of time to sit in on the Q&A, but like I said, we're kind of short on time. So we'll see. I'm optimistic, though. It's been going well so far.
There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, the only show in the known universe where we show how to code a game live, on the air, from scratch, every single line explained. Even when we have no idea what's going on and we're confused, we will still explain every line, and then we'll just correct ourselves later when we realize we've made a horrible, horrible mistake. That is my promise to you here on Handmade Hero. No engines, no libraries, just good old-fashioned quote-unquote engineering, because my understanding is that engineering technically is a more defined term, and like software engineers shouldn't use it, because really they're just programmers. But either way, whatever you want to...
That's like something that nobody really talks about, but it comes up all the time. You know, this idea of us being software engineers. It's not... Like, I think, what is it, in Canada at least, and different countries as well, like, you just cannot refer to yourself as an engineer, or you'll be prosecuted if you don't have, like, an engineer's certification, you know? And so I actually don't describe myself as a software engineer. When people ask what I do, I just say I'm a programmer, because that just seems like a better description, I think.
Call it. It's pretty awesome, and we're about to do some more of it, so I highly recommend sticking around for precisely that kind of awesome. Now, if you are one of those sorts of people who has pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, you should have gotten a link in your email where you can download the source code. So if you would like to follow along at home, this is day 53. unzip day 52 source code, and you will be where I am. So when that big zip that has tons of little zip files, one for every day, unzip 52, and you'll be right where I am. And that may lead you to ask the question, which is, where actually am I? And that's a very good question. Where I am is we just started doing sort of some reworking of how we wanted to structure the game so that we could start doing things in a more logical fashion, where basically things around the player that we are simulating that are on screen and sort of nearby are getting mapped into sort of an active set that we process and that we're going to do all the collision detection on and all the gameplay logic on. And then things that aren't are getting mapped out into a lower frequency update space where they can still have stuff happen to them, but it just may not be stuff that's happening at a higher frequency, so we can support very large numbers of entities in the world, all with autonomous behaviors, even if there's like hundreds of thousands of them, and still have it work okay without making the frame rate intolerable. But one of the things I said that I wanted to do in that was change all the collision detection over to working on entities instead of working on the tile map. And so now we no longer have tile map collisions with our walls, right? You can see that we just straight up, go kind of off these things. Oh dear. What have I done? What have I done indeed? It looks like we're drawing a bitmap in an illegal way. Well, I correct me if I'm wrong, but anytime we have a bug, we should fix the bug. So pretend I didn't say any of the things that I just said, and let's find out what happened here, because that is way more important at the moment. I don't like having bugs in the code. I really strongly dislike having bugs in the code at any time, really. So anytime I get a repro, I like to look into it. So let's take a look at what happened here. Presumably, we were past some valid things, but we ended up drawing them to or from invalid locations, presumably. So taking a look at this here, we do, in fact, let me check to see what our source row pointer is even. Here, source row. So source row is wrong in general. Where are we on? We're on Y180, and what is our max Y is 181. So this is the last row of the bitmap, and it looks like we are basically fetching off the end of our bitmap for some bad reason, and I'm not sure exactly what that reason actually is. So let's try and figure that out. So let's see. We've got a buffer here that we are trying to...
So I was actually just talking about this bug because I discovered it way back when we actually first implemented the draw bitmap code. Because when you walk off, the edge of the map, the min Y and min X of the where you're starting to draw the bitmap into the frame buffer is actually out of the bounds of the frame buffer, right? And if it doesn't start at the min X and Y, it's at like some point in there. It starts drawing that offset that gets set into the frame buffer, winds up being outside of the bounds of it. And I guess it's just kind of strange to me that he didn't see it until now.
Draw to, I guess that's not the problem at the moment. And we have a bitmap that we're loading from. It has a height of 217. And so it looks like this must be our offset code that is busted. Am I right about this? Plus source offset X, plus offset Y. So essentially the way we were doing this is we backed ourselves up, right? So here's our bitmap pixels pointer. We backed ourselves up to just before the last row, because the bitmaps, as we were loading them, were inverted. They were flipped. So basically the bitmaps in BMP format are stored from the bottom up, and so what we had to do was start at that top row because we were doing our blitz from the top down. So we basically go ahead and back up to that point by saying bitmap height -1. So that seems reasonable there, and then we're pre-running our pixels to that.
If I'm not mistaken, it's actually in the dest row, right? Because that min X and min Y is jumping out of bounds of the actual, frame buffer that is stored in the buffer's memory. Right there, 2 lines below where he's got it highlighted in his editor. I guess I can show that off in here. So that's why I have this right here. And I just wind up setting the offset to be the length, which probably isn't even correct, actually. Or maybe just not necessary. Like, instead of this business, we could say that it's just 0 or something. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it doesn't go outside of the bounds of this memory, right? But yeah, I think that's the issue. It's this calculation here, the same one that he has right there.
Right? Then we've got a source offset X. In this case, there isn't one. What's the source offset Y? It's 37. So if the source offset is 37, 37 plus where were we at there? Plus 180, right? Well, that does seem to indicate a problem here. So what have we done wrong? What have we done wrong here? So what we did is we said when we are off the screen, So we can see what the value is that we passed in, right? We passed in real x. We rounded that down, so that would have been, oops, I didn't want real x, I wanted real y. So that's where we were trying to draw. When we round that guy, I assume that we got 37. Yeah, so we got 37, rounded it up. So we ended up with 37. So we came in here and we said, well, the 37 is less than 0. So what we need to do is we need to set our min y actually equal to 0, and we need to offset where we are drawing so that we don't... This is very, very interesting, people. This is particularly interesting. So what is the bitmap height?
I see. So also because the fact that he has to draw starting from the bottom, I missed that he was setting, that source offset x and y inside of those clamping calls, but I don't do that, right? Because I don't need to. Because when I read in the buffer, actually, I do have this here. That seems... Well, let me think about this. Why am I doing that? If it's less than 0. Why would we... Oh, I see. Yeah, no, okay, never mind. I'm getting that wrong. This is just so that, like, if we didn't do this, then the bitmap would be clipping off incorrectly, basically. Like, it would start to stop drawing, whatever the X is into the, yeah, like that. And that just blows everything up, actually. I guess I didn't expect that to crash things. That was kind of... Yeah. But you see that, that's just wrong. And so instead of him actually walking off... Well, maybe we're actually hitting an assert. Is that what's happening? Because we're trying to wrap, and we shouldn't be. I think we have an assert that checks against that. Yeah. So that is not the assertion that I thought we were hitting. Yeah, it's this floating point math business. And maybe it's related, I don't know. But maybe there's just something else going on here that he's talking about at this point. Now I'm second guessing myself heavily.
Right? The bitmap height is 217. So if we were actually adding real y, this is particularly odd. So let's find out what's going on here. If we were actually adding this, right, we would be going from 37 to 181, right? Those are the rows that should actually be involved here, although 181 should be the row at which we would stop, right? So that is, we're not going to fill row 181. Yeah? So then, if we find that we are actually, I should say that, we're negative 37, right? So then, if we find that we've actually, oh, wow. Is this actually because this straddles the positive and negative line, and it happens to be exactly 0.5, so it rounded in a different direction each time? Is that actually what occurred? Check that logic, right? So basically, if it was doing even and odd rounding, right, which says that if the number is even, you round one way, and if it's odd, you round the other way, right? I wonder if it rounded this one up and rounded that one down. I guess that's not even it. It's just if you round towards infinity in either direction, that would, wow, ugh. All right, so I guess that means that this, we can't really do this anymore. We do actually have to go ahead and use the width and height after we do our rounding to make sure that we don't ever have that happen. It's kind of a little unfortunate. I guess the way the real renderer would work wouldn't have to worry about this. That's crazy. But I believe that's actually true. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can repro that. I need my editor here. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can repro that. Let's see here. So Win32, oops, don't need any Win32 there. So in draw bitmap, I'm just going to flat out say that when we go ahead and draw this bitmap, I'm going to set it so that real y is negative 36.5, just to see what happens. Just to see. And let's find out. Hey, look, we immediately get a crash. So that's good. That's a good thing, right? And of course, what I need to do now is turn off that other draw bitmap call, so I only get one draw bitmap call. So there we go. Let's get that. Let's see. So first things first, we compute min y.
Now that I think about it, it does make sense that he doesn't have to deal with the bug that I was just talking about. So he is talking about a different problem. And let me see here. Basically, he was pointing out that like this round here, because it's right in the middle between, what was that, 65.5 and 66? No, 36.5 and 37. I don't know where I got 66 from. When this calculation happens, then that is causing some trouble. Now, I wonder if I did something like that, right? Like if I did... oh, how would I do this? Well, it's... yeah, fx, fy. Okay, I can just do this, I think. Now, negative 36.5, will that just do the same thing and cause an immediate crash for us? I don't know. No. It just means we can't go down. Did that happen because I went off screen? Again? Yeah. So I can't, maybe that isn't an issue at all for us because, you know, we're doing this with the round proc from the math package in Odin, but the issue that I was talking about was actually something else. And after thinking about it, I think I understand why, because we're indexing into these slices, right, with the these offsets, but he just kind of does some pointer arithmetic, and now, you know, the destination row or destination pixels that he's about to start writing to are basically over the bounds of the buffer, but it doesn't matter because when he gets into the loop, it actually won't iterate. So he won't actually try to write to those. So what I was talking about is actually unrelated and a problem that only I have because I'm using slices and I'm, you know, like if I was using multi-pointers here, the same way that Casey is essentially using a multi-pointer, but it's not really called that. It's just a pointer to a bunch of elements, right, in memory. Because he's using a multi-pointer in concept, right, he doesn't have to worry about it, and if I did things that way, I wouldn't have to worry about it. So I just confused the two issues. Don't mind me. Don't know what I'm talking about.
Y and max y, right? And let's see what real x plus bitmap width is here. Oops, plus bitmap height. There we go. So, yeah, this is exactly what one might expect. So, when we compute this, right, that is exactly what's happening. So we're getting real y in here, and it's exactly 0.5 is where the value happened to end up. So it rounded min y down, but it rounded max y up because it was positive after the addition, right? So the negative rounded towards negative infinity, I assume, and this one rounded towards positive infinity. It's either that or it's even odd rounding. I don't know what the rounding mode is right now set on the processor. So it actually expanded the size of the blit by one more pixel than should have been legal, right? So I guess, and this is a little wonky, but I guess we will have to do this the other way. We will have to do it this way so that we avoid that possibility, which I didn't really want to have to do before because I wanted to talk about, you know, I was thinking it'd be better when we start to render work to talk about the things in actual float space, but that's okay. So I think this is actually what we need to do to make sure that we don't ever have that problem, so that we essentially only do the rounding once, and then whatever happens, happens. So there we go. All right, well, that was pretty cool. Quite a way to start the stream, but at least we've got it now. So there.
Well, let me back that up and see actually what he did. Instead of doing that round... okay. I see. Okay, I think I understand the crux of the issue here now. It's the fact that he was doing the round twice, which I think he just said. Or rather... yeah. I'd have to listen to him again, but basically he takes in the align X and Y, casts that to a float. Is that right? Yeah, and then he's doing this round. But if he does that on the result of the round that he gets back, rather than doing it on the original input and then adding the bitmap width and height, then that circumvents that issue. I don't know if that's actually a problem for us, but I guess I could go ahead and make that change. Right? So instead of doing this, it would just be this. And we don't actually need to cast that at all at this point. We just got ints coming back. So maybe that's just inconsequential because I wasn't getting that bug, right? So it could just be like an Odin's, you know, math round implementation difference between what he has, and I can't remember if he's making a math.h call. I don't know if he was, but it doesn't, you know, cause any issues for us. We're still getting that assert to trip when we walk off and wrap, but that's just not the assert that I'm expecting to see. Like, I want to see an assert, but that's not the one. I don't understand why that is. I wonder if we mess with this a little bit. Go back to the way it was, if we'll still hit this assert. Or if we'll hit a different one. Went a little bit too fast. Let's try this again. Yeah, so it's the same one. I don't know what that's about, but the assert that I would expect to hit is, let me see if I can find it. It's not in here. Is it in the tile code? Huh. I think actually, yeah, that was in like the movement code and we got rid of it, and maybe Casey didn't mean to, or he meant to bring those asserts back. But maybe he's just not tripping that assert, right? Like, I mean, if I disabled it, I think we'd be fine. We talked about that a long time ago and about fixing it. But yeah, basically we wrap and then the camera gets messed up. And if we try to go back, we cannot. So actually that seems wrong. I feel like we should be able to walk back to the starting room. But I'm not too worried about that because really it doesn't matter with where we're trying to go from here. Because we're about to add a wall here anyways. See, I can walk up here just fine, but it's when we wrap back the other way. So I don't want to worry about it too much. I feel like, you know, maybe if I just sat there and finally made that change to this assert. Where was that? To deal with this issue. Maybe it's something like this. I think we had an equals there before. Oh, it looks like it's still tripping. That will be an exercise for if and when I feel like I should care. But like realistically, we just need to restrict the player from going out of bounds because I don't see that bug anywhere else. It's only when we go, you know, we try and wrap, and then something is happening. The player's position is updating in such a way that it's, and also because it's messing up the camera. Yeah, the wrapping is messing up the camera and the player's position relative to it, and I think that's partially why that assert is tripping. So it's not that the floating point math could still be wrong there. That's totally possible, but it's just not, I don't think it's a big deal.
This the other way. We will have to do it this way so that we avoid that possibility, which I didn't really want to have to do before because I wanted to talk about, you know, I was thinking it'd be better when we start to render work to talk about the things in actual float space, but that's okay. So I think this is actually what we need to do to make sure that we don't ever have that problem, so that we essentially only do the rounding once and then whatever happens, happens. So there we go. All right, well, that was pretty cool. quite a way to start the stream. But at least we've got it now. So there we go. All right. So back to what I was saying. What we have not done yet with our new system is actually put anything in place for the wall entities and that sort of stuff. So basically what I wanted to do was stop having the tile map be checked at all for really anything, and to start just checking for entities. So I want to make it so that he can't walk through these little white tiles that we've got here. I want to make it so that he can't walk through those. But basically, in order to do that, I have to add them to the actual entity list, right? And so what we need to do is we need to actually formalize now how we are bringing things into and out of that set, right? And the other thing that we need to have an idea for is how we're going to actually manage these entity sets, because one of the things that's true is I don't actually know if it's kind of hard to say at this point. I don't actually know whether I want a low entity for every single thing that could be in the tile map, like trees and stuff. Or I should say a dormant entity. I don't know if that's a particularly good way to store all that stuff. It might be just a waste of storage. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. And we might want to compress those in other ways. But the other thing that's kind of hard for me to think about right now, and this is why I'm not sure, and I probably don't want to take any steps towards it just yet, is I don't know how crazy we want to go with modifiable scenes as well. Like if we have a thing where we want you to be able to burn down trees or break through walls, then it is kind of true that the more destructible the environment is, the more those things might want to actually be stored as entities. So it's a little bit hard to say without getting further down the game design path to know really how much of each individual thing we're doing. So for now, I guess the first thing to do is say, all right, let's just start by simplifying our world state a little bit here. Let's just say that instead of doing that many screens, we're just going to do just the one screen, right? So the only thing we're going to do is just this screen. So this is it. So since we only have one screen being generated now, which is just this one, it'd be safe. We won't have too many entities to worry about, so we can try just dealing with the ones that we see on the screen here, making those into entities and seeing what we get, right? So let's go ahead and do that. What I want to do here is say, okay, we have sort of this concept here of the camera moving, right? This is the concept of the camera moving. And what we haven't really done yet is formalize what happens when the camera moves, and that camera having to sort of bring with it, get rid of any stuff that is now off camera, right? And bring in any stuff that has now come on camera. So what I'm going to do is try to break that off now into a separate function so that we kind of have a known place where this sort of stuff actually happens, right? And so what I want to do is take this stuff basically. Well, that stuff's fine, but it's this stuff right here, like this entity offset for frame and this stuff where we actually move the camera here. I want to sort of pull that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a function here, right? And that function is going to be something, actually not going to be inline, internal function, and that's going to be set camera or something like this, right? And set camera is going to take a game state, and that game state, it's going to take that, and it's also going to take what you wanted to set the camera to be. So basically there'll be a tile map position that is where you want the camera to be, a new camera P, right? So that's what I want to do. And so now, instead of doing this math directly, what I want to do is do it this way. So there's going to be a new camera P, and then everything here just operates on the new camera P. Okay, so we do this, like so, and then we say new camera P, right? This is actually going to go ahead and go up here, like so.
And I'm muted. Glad I caught that sooner than later. So I'm going to go ahead and get caught up with him. And I don't know if this procedure is going to take more parameters, but if we add one more, I guess I'll just break that back up. So this pops into there. And instead of, what was it? Instead of old camera P, all this is going to be off of the new camera P. I see. So taking the existing state, updating it here, and just kind of like flipping that logic, I guess. And then over here, we say set camera. And are we going to return that entity offset for frame? I guess I don't know where he's going with this quite yet. But we pass in that and that. That's not defined, that's fine. So this is actually going to be the old one, I guess. Yeah. And here's our new camera. And was that a pointer? That was not supposed to be a pointer. And this is supposed to be a pointer. Or not. What's going on with that? What is going on with that? It's an invalid type. Invalid type. Oh, I keep doing this. This is like the third time I've done this. It's just state. Should probably just change it to game state. So I stopped doing that. Oh, and this needs to be a pointer. Okay. I think we're good.
And we're going to have to deal with the entity offset for frame in a slightly more special way as well, which we may actually just do in there for now, but eventually we'll probably try to roll it into a different iteration. So what we want to do now is when we finish this, we'll just call set camera. And in fact, you know what I could do for now, actually, just to keep it a little more straightforward, I could do it this way, just for now, so that we can keep the same data flow that we had before, so we're not changing too many things at once. Okay, so we could do that, and we could say, all right, entity offset for frame. We go ahead and do that set camera. We pass the game state, and we pass that new location that we want to go to. And so that should, let's see, tile map. That should be able to be ported pretty directly. So we have our D camera P is just whatever the camera P was. So we've got, in fact, what is our actual camera P here? There it is, camera P. So we've got our game state, camera P, and then we've got, well, actually it's this way. There we go. And then we've got our new camera P. That's basically what's going on here. After we do that difference, our game state camera P should be set to the new camera P, like so. And then we have that in the offset that we've computed. So that's just doing the same thing that we were doing before. Hopefully that'll still work just fine when I walk off screen and then walk back on screen. Yes, so we're moving the camera properly. And so now what needs to happen is whenever we do this move, we now need to do two things. First, we need to go through all of our high-end entities, right? So all of the entities that are in the high set, and we need to remove them, right? So we need to basically say, well, not remove those that are too far away, right? So we know.
Hold up. So this, does that take a pointer? It sure does. Just need to get caught up here. Maybe not. Is this not? I mean, is that a pointer? Yeah, that's a pointer. So what is going on? Is it because this is not a pointer? So something actually that I learned yesterday, while I was reading, I think I can't remember if it was on Discord or somewhere else, but you can shadow procedure variables and the compiler will not yell at you, which I didn't know. So everywhere that I could remember off the top of my head where I was trying to avoid shadowing by assigning the default param to a different name, I was not doing that. And so, like, rather than playing with this and being too clever, not even too clever, but just doing something that could wind up blowing in my face, I can just do this and create a new camera P off of the procedure parameter. So I think I prefer that to messing with the implementation, because then Casey might start calling the same procedure in multiple places and he's passing in a pointer and I forgot that it doesn't take a pointer or vice versa, and then I, pass it in that way, and then when it doesn't work I get confused and then I'm worried that I'm just doing everything wrong, and I don't need any more of that than I already get. I get plenty of that. I constantly feel like I'm doing things wrong, but somehow it manages to work out okay in the end, every time. So I think this is right. I think we can go ahead and run this, make sure it does what we want. Oh no. We're busted. Okay, what did I do wrong here? This is still the D camera P. We assign the game state to the new camera, or the game state's camera to the new camera. We take the negative X and Y off of the delta in the camera's position, and then we just return that. That all looks fine. Oh, I didn't update all of these. Whoops. Yeah, at least I think. How do I wildcard? Because all of these are the same except for their last character. Can I just do that? I'm just going to look this up. Is it dot star? Oh, well, the dot... I guess the dot just works. I guess I already knew that. Actually, I don't even want to do that, do I? Yeah, I think actually we just want to replace this with new camera P like that. Oh, great. Because... Wait, what? Type tile map position. Hold on. Went and got myself confused again. Oh, jeez. Yep. I messed that up. We're still working with the tile map position, so it's absolute tiles, not this other business. With just directly off of a vector. It would be nice for those to be also in a vector, but we're not there yet. So let's try that again. We'll just back that off. And I think that's right. Yeah. Now we should be good. My bad. Yeah, the camera's getting set to something completely wrong there. And so we could never get it back into this room, even though our player position was probably coming back just fine. Or is that wrong? Yeah, the player... I don't know. I don't want to think about it anymore. It was a dumb bug. It's gone now. We're fine.
We need to go through all of our high-end entities, right? So all of the entities that are in the high set. And we need to remove them, right? So we need to basically say... well, not remove those that are too far away, right? So we know where the camera is, right? And we know what the entity offset for frame is. So I guess when we... This is exactly... You know what? This is going to happen immediately, essentially. So I guess I didn't really need to do that. That's fine. I guess that one little bit of testing. Yeah. So get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do it right here. Eventually, we may try to roll this in to another loop, so we don't have to loop over the high end entities multiple times. But for now, we'll do it this way. So we basically have our entity index here, right? And we're going to go over all of those entities. So this is the array count of the high entities, and we're going to look at them and say, okay, let's go ahead and get whatever entity we're on, entity index. I should mention, you know, this isn't normally the way I do it, by the way. I've been doing it this way for the sake of people who watch because it's usually the way that things are normally done. I wonder if I should just do it the way I normally do it. I actually normally do it this way. I don't know what people think about that.
I'll just back that up so you can see what he did. Instead of indexing into the multi-pointer, right, he just does pointer arithmetic to get at the entity index that he cares about. And when he did that, it broke my brain just a little bit, and I tried doing it in Zig, and I don't know why I tried doing it in Zig. The code was fine the way it was. I was just like, huh, does this even work? And it, of course, it blew up. But, yeah. So, nothing too exciting.
That's how I usually, when I'm not doing it for the benefit of other people, that's how I usually actually write my array accessors, because then you don't have to take the address of something, because this is essentially a dereferencer, right? That dereferences the pointer and gets what it's pointing to, but I still want a pointer. So I feel like that's a little bit better. Maybe we'll leave that for now. What do you know? All right, so when we do this...
like, I guess I just don't understand why it's why it would be preferable or not preferable to just do something like this, right? Indexing into a big list honestly makes more sense to me than like saying I want to start at the base address of like if this was a pointer, right? And then going off, you know, to that index. I guess I don't care. I would be fine with either of these. What's going on here? Is that inclusive? It's less than, because if we went all the way up to the length and then try to index into it, then that should fail. We're getting out of bounds there. But we don't get that with the draw bitmap code, which I was looking at, you know, in the beginning of the stream when we were talking about that, and that was kind of throwing me off. I was like, why is that not failing? I had to think about it a bit more. So we got to use this now. Okay.
We're going to take the high entity, right? And that high entity, we are going to go ahead and take its P, and we're going to add the entity offset per frame, right? And then we're going to check to see if that P is inside or outside of basically our valid rectangular region, right? And this is the kind of thing that we probably will start doing a lot of, and so I kind of feel like I may want to introduce something here. For example, this is just, you know, a convenient sort of thing. You can imagine wanting to do something like is in rectangle, right? Or something like that, where you basically say, here is the min, here is the max, you know, and here is the test value. And similarly, what I almost would like to do as well is just say that there's a rectangle 2, right, structure, something like that. And it's got its min and its max, right? And we can test it that way. Why do I like to bundle them like that? So the reason that I like to bundle my rectangles sometimes that way is because rectangles oftentimes want to be constructed in lots of different ways. If you do it this way, it becomes very hard to do, right? Because let's say I do is in rectangle, and I want to test inside a rectangle, and I've got like the center and the dimensions of the rectangle, right? Well, then I've got to first construct the min and the max here, right? Or have a function that constructs them, and then I got to pass the min and the max, right? And it's just kind of annoying. Whereas if I take a rectangle 2 here, like so, then what I can do is I can actually just have a bunch of functions that are like, you know, rect min max, you know, these just little inline bundling functions that create rectangles in different ways. So rect min max, rect center dim is another one that I often do, which is basically like, you know, constructs a rectangle in a slightly different way. So here's like rectangle 2 this way, looks like this, right? It's just directly setting the min and the max of the rectangle. But this rectangle, on the other hand, does the min is the center minus the dim, right? And the max is the center plus the dim. So this is basically like stores half width and half height, right?
Interesting. So we're just veering off course a little bit here and doing some rectangle stuff, defining some procedures and a rectangle type. But over here, we'll say, well, he's still working on that. So we're going to do this actually. And then below, we're going to do something with a min and max bound for a rectangle. And then we're going to ask if all of these, well, actually, I think he's just going to pass in a rect here, right? We'll see. We'll come back to that, I guess. So we go over here, and I don't think he implemented this yet, but min-max, I'm kind of thinking I don't want that because I can define a rectangle like this and then just like that way. That's exactly what he does with that min-max proc. There's no test vector parameter there. The center dim one is a different story. Probably makes sense for us to implement that. Casey is the only person who has the style, data type, or data structure, and variable name. Yeah, data structure, snake case, and then variable name title case. Yeah, I I've never seen that. I've never used that style myself outside of when I first tried Handmade Hero way back in the day in C and C++. And, you know, I think he explains it at some point and just says that that's the style that like everybody that he worked with back when he was at Rad Game Tools used. And so, and a bunch of those guys are pretty legendary programmers in their own right. You know, they might not have the name recognition that like a John Carmack does, but to do what they were able to do and license their code for, you know, thousands of games or whatever, like you can only aspire to do something even like a fraction of that has a fraction of impact as that, right? So it's hard to say that it really matters all that much, but it is interesting how like the generation you come up in and just the group of people you surround yourself by will influence your style in these ways. And then of course I'm just using, you know, to the best of my ability what Odin does in the Odin code base, which is you know, kind of the opposite. So anyway, we have the center dim call where we're gonna have a rectangle, and he calls it a rectangle too, so right? So maybe I should do the same. I don't know. And then this should return a bool. And then both of these will return rectangle 2s. Well, again, I don't know if I want to bother using this. It just seems superfluous, so I'm not going to implement that. But we'll do this one. And this is actually, instead of a min-max, we have a center and a dim, and there's no test. And we'll say result min is going to be the center minus the dim. And the max is center plus the dim, is that right? Yeah.
Like so on. And I should probably say that rect center half dim, just so you know that's what that is. Because we could do it the other way, but then we have to multiply by 0.5 as well, right? And so you can imagine lots of these. Like another one would be rectangle min dim, right? Would be another one that's very common. And so this one would actually be the min sets the min, and the max is the min plus the dim. So that's like if I want to do the corner. And so that allows me to do stuff like now when I call this, if I wanted to, I can just do rect center half dim here, and I just pass it, and then I pass the thing that I'm trying to do. And it allows me to just have a lot of different notations for stuff that takes rectangles. Does that make sense? So that's just kind of, you know, that's one of those things that I just know I like from experience. There was no way for me to know that just from looking at the code I was doing there. It was just something that I was thinking of, and I was like, well, if we're going to do rectangles, it's probably a good time for me to talk about how I like to do that. So just something to think about. There you go. In this case, I don't think it'll be particularly important for that. I was just sort of a thing, aside. I don't think we'll actually have to use that here, but that is how I typically like to do it, so I thought I'd do it that way. All right, so anyway, when I want to do my inside rectangle test, right, I've got my result here, and my result is going to be equal to whether or not this guy is inside or outside. And here, I remember the other day, Garlana Bloom was asking about whether I thought that inclusive rectangles were okay, because that's the way like Unity did it or whatever, and I think I said, it's just whatever you write your code to expect. And so for our purposes here, I feel like if I had to guess, I would say maybe we shouldn't do them, though. I don't know. I'm leaning towards keeping our other rectangle convention where the max is not, the very max is not included. Because it allows you to butt two rectangles so that they're perfectly touching, but that so something that's right on the edge only falls into one or the other. So for now, I'm not going to do that. But again, like I don't think Unity's necessarily wrong for doing it that way. I just don't know. I just feel like maybe we should try it this way. And if it turns out to be bad, then we'll switch. But for now, I think that's probably the way that I would prefer to do it. Okay. So obviously the test to see whether something's in a rectangle is basically just testing the four conditions, the four boundaries of the rectangle, right? Whatever my test thing was, basically I have to say that I want the test to be greater than or equal to the min, right? So both the y, on both the y, I want to be greater than or equal to that min. And then the same is true for the max, only instead of less than or equal to, I'm just going to do less than, so that we don't include that final coordinate. It's just not quite in there, yet, right? And so that would be a point in a rectangle test, right? So it tests this against this. So that's, you know, just a simple thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. And again, I just kind of spam those out there. We may have all kinds of bugs in there. We're not at the point where we're testing things rigorously or anything like that here. Again, this is just exploratory engine code, so you can see how things work. So I don't care too much about that. We'll debug it as necessary. So let's go ahead and see. So what we have here is our camera inbounds or something, right? And the camera inbounds is going to be a rectangle centered about the origin. So it's a rect center half dim kind of a situation, certainly, right? And the center is just going to be the origin. And because the definition of our local coordinate system that we're doing everything in is that the center point where the camera's looking is at the origin, right? And all of our high entity positions are relative to that. So then it's just how big in meters is the actual span of the area that I want to cover. And so we know we've got the tile side in meters, right? And so the real question is just how many tiles do I want to have in that working set, right? That's really all we have to decide here. And so we're going to have another V2. It's going to be multiplied by the tile side in meters. And
I guess I missed that he did a whole other one too, which is this a whole other procedure for rectangles, center half dim. What the hell's my laptop doing? Don't do that. See, random screen flashing. I feel like it never does that, but then I leave it idle for less than an hour and it starts doing weird stuff. Yeah, did he not have... Maybe well, I must have just named this wrong. Whoops. Yeah, I think I just named this wrong. I see. That, or like when I started writing that. See, he has dim here still for both of these, but it's the half dim. Okay, I feel dim-witted. Yeah, and then we're gonna pass in the camera in bounds here, perhaps. Let's go ahead and get him caught back up to where we're at. Okay, so we're starting at 0, which I think we can just splat in like that.
And because the definition of our local coordinate system that we're doing everything in is that the center point where the camera's looking is at the origin, right? And all of our high entity positions are relative to that. So then it's just how big in meters is the actual span of the area that I want to cover. And so we know we've got the tile side in meters, right? And so the real question is just how many tiles do I want to have in that working set, right? That's really all we have to decide here. And so we're going to have another V2. It's going to be multiplied by the tile side in meters, and it's just going to be how many tiles we want in the working set. So, you know, let's say we did some, we're just totally, you know, this is just going to be to do. I am totally picking these numbers randomly, right? I just figure, well, we said we were 17 across, so maybe the dim, and you know what? I'm going to make another one here, which is rect center dim, so I can actually also do one that just automatically does that multiply by half for me. So center 0.5f dim. There we go. Just again, just making it easy on myself. So I'm going to go ahead and do rect center dim.
Okay, so he did want to have both, right? Okay, so this is just going to wrap the half dim one. By having the dimension being passed into the center half dim call. Okay. Easy enough.
Dim. So I'm going to say that I want it to be 17 times 3, which is just 3 screens worth that way, and I don't know what we said, 9 or something times 3 up and down, right? That's going to be the camera inbounds. And oops, that's no good. It's half. Yeah. So when I say this, I'm just...
So he's using 17 for the X, which makes sense. What is that, like tile? It's like tile room width or something. Tiles. Why can't I? Tiles per height and tiles per width. Tiles per width, and we're gonna make it ×3. And then tiles per height, also ×3. And yeah, this is formatted all kinds of weird. So what I might do is actually bring that down and do that. I don't know. It feels wrong. Might just go ahead and do that. So I don't have this weird, super weird formatting going on. That's mostly just because I'm so zoomed into the code that I have to break things up more than I typically would. So I think that looks right. And I'll just write this in. We are picking these dimensions for the camera bounds, right? Totally random.
So that is, I guess I'll call it camera bound. That is the camera bound. So from then on, I can check against those camera bounds and say, if this guy is in the rectangle, then it's okay that he's here. But if he's outside the rectangle, then he's not allowed to be a high entity anymore, and he should become dormant. So I'll just do change entity residence at that point, right? And I'll change the entity residence for this entity index, right? Yeah, game state. Where is my game state? Change entity index. So that's probably going to take the game state, and it's going to take the fact that he can now become low or dormant. I don't really know which one we want to do yet. Like I said, I guess low is probably what he becomes at that point. All right, so that does the first part of the thing that I need. What is my problem here? Entity residence. Oh, whoops, it's the other way around. There you go. Set camera doesn't return a value. So that goes ahead and demotes people. But then we have another thing we have to do, which is now we also have to take anyone who should have come into.
So did I not change this right? I did not. Rect is a rectangle 2. And of course, so this should have been off of the rect. And now this is good. Not quite. Set camera does not return a value. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Being, and that is within there, and those people should come into the high entity set. Right? So as that camera moves to encompass them, they should come in there, right? And so that's what to do because we don't really have the knowledge to do that yet, and that's the thing that we'll start working on. Move entities into high set here. And then the other thing we want to do now is say, all right, let's go ahead and move in any tiles that we now have to sort of do the fake, since we don't really have it worked out quite yet exactly how it works. We have to move in the entities that should be there for those tiles that are sort of in the.
Ooh, that would have been a bad bug to leave in. If we're not in the rectangle, I was just kind of looking at this and trying to make sure I'm following here. So as the camera moves, away from entities that are more than 3, well, I guess it'd be 1.5 screen widths away in any direction, we move those out of high and into low. And we're going to eventually back that out and just stick to 2 different frequencies, I'm pretty sure. But obviously we don't want to be in a broken state before we get to that point. I guess it's similar to the style, Casey's that is, that Win32 uses, but the non-library data types are snake case. Yeah, Win32 has all kinds of weird sort of stuff going on. Just like the names are, my brain has to work overtime to decipher them. Like H handle or and then like all of the different like ANSI versus like what is it, UTF string calls with like formatting string, all these different things that are. But yeah, that's right. It does use like title case for their a lot of their procedure calls. It's all over the place, I'm sure. I haven't looked at. I've only looked at as much Win32 as I need to do the platform layer for Handmade Hero, and it just having to look at any more of it than is necessary. It just seems terrible. I guess it could be a good skill to have. Be the person that's willing to just master the Win32 API, so that when somebody really needs somebody who knows the Win32 API, you've got that skill. But I'm probably not that guy.
Tile map. And I guess now that I'm thinking about this, I don't know that I really want to go ahead just yet and actually change the tile map to be storing entities directly, but that's kind of where this is going eventually, right? Like what we want to do eventually is the tile map just basically now, instead of being a tile map that's locked where we just have states of tiles, I just want to have those entities right in there where the entities are sort of positioned so that it creates whatever the map actually is. And I'm just trying to think of how I would do that. What's the easiest steps to get to that point, whether I want to leave the tile map as a tile map for now and generate entities as we pull them in, or whether I kind of want them to be out there. I think I'm just going to go for the gusto. I feel like at this point, I'm happy with the way these things are going, and I kind of want to just keep going in that direction. So yeah, I forgot we added jump in the Q&A last night. Ha! Or levitate, really, because there's no... Jump implies that I couldn't keep doing it, but he's more like a hot air balloon, essentially, at this point. He's under the influence of gravity, but anytime we want to, we can always just make him float up by holding down the up arrow. So it's only if you tap the up arrow that it's actually a jump in any real sense of the word. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about here was just say, all right, so maybe I actually want to go ahead and start doing that work for the tile map system, moving entities in and out of that. And what that would basically mean is that those dormant entities would actually be sort of stored, if you will, in the tile map, basically. So in one way or another, the tile map is actually sort of a compendium. It's sort of a thing that lets us pull out the entities, less so than something where we actually pull out tiles from it, right? And that's a pretty major change. But again, yeah, so what I wanted to do was do that basically so that I could make it so that all of these individual things were tiles. So there is one thing I could do to make that transition a little easier. What I could do is just slam in some entities that are basically walls that are there, right? So let's try that. Let's try that first, because that's relatively simple to do. So what's relatively simple to do there is when we're actually creating these things, right? When we're setting the tile map value, I could just flat out add an entity now that is whatever this thing is, right? That is at its location and has that width and height, right? So let's just do that. We know what the tile position is because it's the abs tile X, Y, and Z, which we've got, right? And so I'm gonna add so that there's basically a little Handmade Hero guy, a little one of him all around the whole outside, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got initialize player, right? Which works this way. I don't know why we didn't do add entity for that. This maybe should have been an add player call. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it should be an add player call for now? Because we do it this way. We're just doing the add right here anyway. So I kind of feel like we could have just done it this way for now, right? Entity index equals add player, something like that. What do you think about that? Seems reasonable to me. Initialize player, right? So we just basically have internal Win32 add player. I don't know why I cut and pasted it that way. That was dumb. Result, or I should say entity index equals add entity. So
okay, just a bit of code massaging here. That's going to become that, and then instead of being passed the entity index, we get it out when we just call this wrapped procedure here, like that. And so that doesn't have to change at all. And this will be something like add wall or add tree, I'm pretty sure. And then if we go to where we were calling that before, we get rid of that, and we change that to that. And this only takes 1 gram.
And I guess what I don't know, though, is does this guy have to? No, he doesn't. So I don't think there's entity index. Yeah. All right. Add entity function does not take. Yes, that's true. Hold on a second. Add player must return a value. Return entity index. So there we go. Change it to add player, and we run it, and we can add a player. So that's good. And now let's go ahead and add another one of these that adds a wall. So let's do add wall for now. And what we want to do there is take a tile map. I guess we want to do abs tile X abs tile Y, abs tile Z for now, since I don't know what else really to set there.
I guess I did not make that change totally correctly. I did not return... Well, are we initializing players anywhere else? No. This is because add entity does not return anything. It does return the index.
We run it, and we can add a deck. Hold on a second. That player must return a value. Return entity index.
Oh, yeah, because we still need to get the index back. Okay. And we'll just say that's an int. Okay. Well, yeah, and then I didn't get it back out of the add player call. Good to go.
So there we go. We changed it to now. Let's do add wall. That adds a wall. So let's do add wall for now. And what we want to do there is take a tile map. I guess we want to do abs tile X, abs tile Y, abs tile Z for now, since I don't know what else really to set there. So we'll just do abs tile X, abs tile Y, abs tile Z. The offset can be nothing. We are zeroing these, are we not, though? I feel like add entity already zeros them. Yes, it does. So I feel like there's really no reason for that to be done. I don't know why we're doing that there. And then the height is going to be that game state world tile map tile side in meters, right? Because that's how big our that's how big our tiles are supposed to be on a side. And it does collide. That's true. And we don't really care what its residence is, I guess, at the moment. That'll be a test to see if it gets brought into the high set when it does. And we would not want to follow the camera. So that's basically the entirety of our add wall call. Oh.
I was watching him do this, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's making this change to the wrong call. I wonder how long it takes for him to find out. And he just found out. So let me see if I can just make these changes. Wait a minute. And he fixed it real quick. Okay, so this, yeah, these values are going to be passed in, right? And we'll just do that. They're all going to be U32s, right? And there's no offset. The height. Oh, he didn't change that yet. They do collide. And then like he was saying, we don't care about this camera following business. Not going to spend the whole game looking at a tree. Okay.
Whoops. Of course, I accidentally edited the wrong one. But that's okay. That's what happens on the stream sometimes, people. Yeah, you know it does. All right, so let's go ahead and fix that there. There we go. I don't even want to know what kind of cut and paste mistakes I just introduced there. All right. So in theory, we have now added some walls. Oh, well, we haven't yet because we didn't actually call it. But in theory, we have written a function that lets us add some walls.
Yeah, let's see if that'll work. I don't... Well, this was supposed to be... Wasn't the height supposed to be something else? Yes. Okay, so we did update these, and we don't need to change the entity residence when we add a wall, which makes sense. And then the rest of this, I feel like I've got more lines of code here than he does. Why is that? He just leaves this zeroed out. There we go. And then this is actually now the whole dimensions of a tile. Single tile, which makes sense. And is it in meters? It's in meters because we're in world space, and then, well, this will just be that, I guess. And then I think I can figure out how to, what was it, add wall, add tree? Yeah. I think I can figure this much out on my own. Pass in the game state, right? Who keeps calling me? I got a voicemail. Stomach is freaking out. It will not stop. That needs to be a pointer, maybe? No? Okay. Well, it is highlighting these, so what's the issue with these? Are these somehow not U32s? They may be ints, which is annoying. Why is that? I guess because we just don't do anything with... Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the same thing here, you can see, so that is unfortunate. We're not actually dealing with any tiles here, but now, well, not tiles, but tile map positions, because I'm pretty sure dormant P, that's what that is, yeah. So let's see if we collide with our room once again. Oh no! I don't think I did that right. Yeah. That was not right at all. Well, let's just see what happens with Casey's code and go from there.
But in theory, we have written a function that lets us add some walls. And so let's go ahead and do that. So let's do add wall, and we will take the game state and this stuff, right? There it is. And we'll see what happens. I don't know what happened. Oh my.
Okay,
well,
thank goodness.
Same
problem as me.
That was a mistake, and I admit that. I realized that in retrospect, we should only add it when there actually is a wall. We did not do that. So, you know, my bad. I'm sorry about that. That was a mistake. So let's go ahead and say that, let's pretend that didn't happen. Pretend that we didn't just fill the screens with dudes. And we'll go ahead and try something else here. So we'll say, okay, which tile value do we actually want? We want tile value 2. So only if the tile value actually equals 2 will we, oops, behind my head there. Okay, so there we go. Now I don't know why that only happens. Oh, I do know why it only happens. Never mind. And that's way too much for our poor little, really crappy blit code to handle, especially because we're not even trimming this guy down, so it's like blitting entire extra, you know, a huge area around him as well. But that's correct now, at the very least, and so in theory I can't go through this either, so that's all good. So what I'll probably do is change it so that those walls will get drawn as just little squares, and then I'll stop drawing the tile map. But you'll notice that it didn't actually add any of the walls into the high entity set until we actually did a set camera call, and that's because, right, it was waiting until we had a camera calling entity to actually do that, so until the player joined, it never called our set camera call, which is the thing that brings things into the high set. So what we wanted to do there, right, is we wanted to go ahead and say, although now that I think about it, we hadn't implemented that yet either, so that's a little wonky, right? That is bizarre. That I'm going to go ahead and step into, because I don't understand why that just happened now that I think about it. Now that I think about it, because that should not have worked. That just straight up should not have worked. Why did that work? Because we hadn't implemented that yet. I didn't actually write the code. Okay, wow, all right, so all right, I know how it works now. That was bizarre. Okay, wow. All right, okay. Do I even know? I don't know if I really know how it worked.
Those moments are the best, because no matter how long you've been programming, you know, whether it's almost 10 years like me or almost 20 something years like him, you'll have those moments where you're like, I have no idea why that did what it did. So I guess I probably just missed it, but I'm all frazzled because that was a bunch of changes. But basically, I think what he's wondering is why, if we add the wall, why do we added the wall, but we didn't change the residency, which is what we do for the player, right? Yeah. We say that the player has a high residence as we're adding it, but we don't do that for the walls, and I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah. And I guess I don't really know why either, as I'm looking at this. I think it has something to do with, well, yeah, no. I thought it had something to do with the fact that, like, entities become active as soon as they're in the camera, but that may be what he wants to happen, or within range of the camera, I guess I should say. See, we have this, we have the code here that sets them to be not dormant, but have a low frequency once we're a certain distance away from the camera. But them being brought into high frequency without him actually making it so. Right, because that's what this whole to-do is about, right? That is what he's wondering. He's like, I have a to-do here, but that those entities, they're already active, so what gives? And I feel like in here, he passes dormant to this get entity call. So it shouldn't be made active when we create it. And then in here, when we do make this change to call, or when we do make this call to change the entity residence to be dormant, that's what that should be doing. So yeah, it's not obvious to me. I thought maybe I could just like peek around a little bit and it would be clear, because I want to like beat him to the punch, because that proves that I actually know what's going on, right? That's kind of the whole point, I think, is to get to a point where like I kind of know what's going on without him having to spell it out for me and without me having to think it through really, really carefully. I'm keeping up, but just barely. But I think the more I go out of my way to do that, the more learning will take place.
Yeah, I guess I maybe don't. So when we're doing it here, I think I would have expected to see those entities, right? But they didn't have they hadn't actually been mapped into that space yet, because it didn't have any. Those guys didn't have any entity residence whatsoever, right? So I guess what must have happened is when we finally go and make the set camera call, it must just be because we're finally calling change residence. It just so happens that since they were all non-existent, well, but yeah, none of them even pass. So how is it? Tell me how it is possible that any of these guys are getting drawn. What is going on here? That's just quite the oddity, because I would have expected it not to draw any of these, right? And it doesn't draw them. Ah, okay. I now know what's going on. Yeah, that was bizarre. That was like I guess that's our system being a little bit too clever. So because I wrote it so that whenever I see what's happening now, finally. Because I wrote it that whenever you ask for a thing at high resolution, it does the mapping correctly and all that stuff. As soon as the collision detector, we wrote the collision detector so that we're just like, well, for right now, we'll just check all the entities. We wrote the collision detector to check all the entities.
Okay, that's where it was. I didn't think to check the collision detection code, but that is what's happening when this call gets made. I was looking at the get entity call elsewhere, but if I had bothered to check there, I would have seen that that is happening, right? That's what he just discovered. And that when we go to see if we're colliding with them, we're not colliding with them, right? But we have to check, and therefore they become active, and it's the second. Well, it happens the second we drop in the player. And that's because, yeah, because now we have a player to test against. Okay. Interesting.
So the collision detector actually is the thing that goes through and makes all of those guys come back up to high. Oh, that's hilarious. All right. So it's actually this call right here that's doing it. So that's pretty funny. Well, I guess the system's nice and resilient. That's good, but that was not what I expected. That was not what I was trying to do at all. Not what I was trying to do at all. So yeah, okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and do something a little more straightforward here, though, so we can kind of get back to what we were doing. That was crazy. I didn't realize, I forgot kind of that I had made a system that would always do the high movement correctly if you just asked for one who wasn't already in the high set. I don't know that I really want that to happen. I think I may want that to not be the way it works, but I forgot that I'd added that. And so it was like, hey, poof, as soon as someone needs to know, magically everyone's mapped properly. Surprise.
And I wonder if the reason why maybe you don't want that, I mean, because if there's no player active, right, if we haven't added a player, then even though those entities should technically be active because the camera is pointing at where they exist in, you know, as far as what their positions say they are, the camera's pointing at where they should be showing, but they don't show up until you're doing collision detection against the entities that are moving. Well, in that move player code specifically, which I don't think is being called elsewise, right? Yeah, it only gets called inside of that block where we're checking the controller input. But if we were, let's say we had like a mob that was walking around or whatever, and we called, you know, instead of this being move player, it was move entity, and we were just checking like all of the entities that are active, or however we wanted to go about pulling those entities out. Once we start checking this, wherever we're checking it, it would make all those walls active.
Okay, so let's go ahead and say that inside our entity structure here, let's go ahead and make a entity type as well for now, right? So we'll just say entity type, and inside there, I'm just going to do, well, we'll do hero, and then we'll do wall, and that's really all we've got right now. So I'm going to say that we've got a type in here, type. Oops, that's not our entity structure though. It's there, like so. And now I'm going to say that whenever we add the entity like this, you're going to pass an entity type that you want that entity to be, and then I'm just going to set it to that. So
I don't know if I can call this type. Can I? That's kind of nice. I guess type ID would be like the type name, right? So we get to use type.
now know, so we can at least tell the difference.
And I think all he did was change this. Get my water bottle out of here. Too tall. Change this entity, add entity call, so that it also takes the type, and then sending over here, but you're going to be a wall, and then down here you take a type. Okay, I was looking at Casey's code and I was like, oh, this is weird. Why does this code look so different? It's because we got rid of those asserts to make sure we're not going out of bounds, because Odin will do that for us. That's wrong. I see. Yeah, that's what you get for straight up copying. So this should be like that, I think. And then we'll just say, well, can't I just do this? Like that?
Between a wall, oops, that's not right. There we go. So now we can tell the difference between a wall and a player, which of course is something we would want to do. So for the wall, we'll set wall, and for the player, we will set hero, like that. And then that null entity, oh, I guess that's a good thing too. We can also have a null entity, right? Like so.
He said null. I wonder if I want to go with just none, since that's what I'm doing elsewhere. And then over here, we do that. And I think we're good.
So then when we actually draw the entities, we can just do a simple draw rectangle call. So what we'll do here is we'll say, okay, if this entity, if the dormant entity type equals entity type player, or hero rather, we'll do the hero draw. Otherwise we'll do, well, I guess for anything else that happens to exist, we'll do the draw rectangle call. And so that is going to be in here, okay? And
pretty straightforward, I think. So if entity, well, I guess it's going to be, where is that? Do we even pull that out over here? We do. Okay. If, I don't know why the autocomplete wasn't telling me that I had this. Is that right? If it's a, yeah. It's weird how it does that sometimes. Wish I knew why. Maybe it's just because I'm pulling it off of the game state. The game state, for whatever reason, and it may be because of the way that I'm getting the game state out. Well, that's not right. Jeez. Game, update, and render. Right here. Might be because of the way that I'm getting the game state out. That OLS just can't figure out that that's what I'm turning that game memory into. Because that's the only place where I've seen that happen. Everywhere else it tends to work pretty good. Anyway, so this will just be an else, and then all of this gets brought up into here. Let's see. There we go. And now, well, oh, what's going on here? Gotta fix that. And now I still don't think, well, if we're just gonna draw rectangles everywhere else, this gets us back to where we were, but we won't, oh, we'll have yellow, which I guess is fine. Maybe we'll make them trees here pretty soon.
And let's think about this. So how is this doing? It's doing the ground point, meters to pixels, height to thing, blah, 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 Z player left top, and entity width height. So that might still be correct. What I want to do is stop drawing the tile map entirely, right? So that goes away, and then we can just see what happens here. So that looks right. Those are our tiles, right? And in theory, if I was to change it so that we were going to disallow, so let's say we do two screens, and we were going to disallow disallow up and down movement, right? So I'm just going to say that the random choice, when it does this, it's going to always do one of the first two. So we're not going to allow the up and down. We're not going to allow
what was that? It was like, gotta go back here. Screen X and screen Y. He didn't actually change that.
right.
Oh, he changed this because we have two screens and we want to say if true, basically, or door up or door down, or maybe that should be false.
Just going to say that the random choice, when it does this, it's going to always do one of the first two. So we're not going to allow the up and down. We're not going to allow the stairwells anywhere. Oh, conditional expression is constant. Really? I had no idea. How could it possibly be constant, compiler? Thank you for warning me. You'd think that it would be smart enough to not warn you if you put a 1 in there, as opposed to something that evaluated to a constant. But that is not how compilers are written, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thanks for that warning. I guess I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. What, are you smart enough to do that? No, of course you're not. All right, so we'll just do this, I guess, for now. Thank you, Mr. Compiler, for making my life harder. Something that Microsoft assigns whole teams of people to do, as far as I know. So if we do 2 screens now, in theory, you can walk through here, and that's good. But we only have 2 screens. Again, so all of those are entities now, and they appear to be working correctly, so that's good. Of course, there's still a bunch of yellow blobs. And we still should be able to collide with things even though they're on the other screen, right? We're still treating them, so I still have to go through the wall, through the hole, right? Does that make sense? So that's kind of cool. And the other thing that in theory should work as well is if we wanted to do, you know, some smooth scrolling, I feel like we could do it at whatever granularity we wanted, right? So that set camera call, I think, should probably work just fine if we just always, you know, if we had a much shorter tolerance. So, you know, if we did something that caused us to be off alignment. So, for example, if we were doing something where it was just like, you know, 1 or something in either direction. I don't know if it's going to work quite right because of the hysteresis and stuff, but let's just see.
It'll probably look a bit strange, like it did back when we only had a simple rectangle. But how do I want to do this? I guess I could just do that. Maybe this is a better way to handle these things, but since I can't if0 them out, that's actually not what I wanted to do. This should be an else. What the hell? Quit it. Quit fumbling. Okay. And then over here, we just do this. It's not going to be, my hunch is it's not going to be smooth scrolling. It's going to be, well, these comparisons are wrong. Either way. It's going to move the camera. Yeah. So it's like we're moving the camera over more like stutter scrolling, which is jarring to look at. So this should be like this, right? Well, I guess we don't even need to. Yeah, I think this actually will work, right? No. Yeah, so that's pretty stuttery. Not quite right at all. I guess if I was to try and fix that, how would you do that? You'd have to like add the X and Y that the entity's position is currently offset by, maybe like 1 minus that amount or something like that. We'll see.
So if I do it this way, yeah, so we can actually just change the camera at whatever frequency we want, and it's all good. So that's fine. As you can see, that's all good. And yeah, no real issues. So that's good, and I think that's basically everything that I wanted to do with that test. All right. Yeah. We could actually do smooth scrolling too. I don't really want that, so I'm not going to actually bother, but it's good to know that that's just a good test to run to make sure that everything still works. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so now I think what I'd like to do is sort of concentrate a little bit more on what we were actually trying to do here with the set camera and moving stuff in. So what we want to do now is say move anything in that should have been in, right? And so again, the sort of the lousy way to do that is to come through here and say, go through all of like the dormant entities, right, and move them to high. So we basically say, okay, let's see what the dormant entities are, dormant and dormant entities. And we will say that, well, I just love typing doormat. I've typed that so many times. If that's not reason enough to call them dormant, I don't know what is, because just saying doormat all the time is funny. And basically what we'll do here is say that we'll move stuff into the high set. And as I'm doing this, by the way, I'm starting to be kind of convinced that I probably only want 2 and not 3. So there'd just be a high and a low and there'd be no dormant. I think it's just going to get too complicated with 3. But just calling out my gut feeling, my feels as I feels them. So when we're doing this, what we're going to do now is check, because we're going to make this a more intelligent query in the future, because this was going to have to be more spatial. What I'd like to do here is just test against the tile locations of these guys. So essentially this dormant guy, he's got the abs tile x. So basically what I say is if his abs tile z equals ours, right, equals our new camera p abs tile z, that means he's on the same plane as us, so that's good. And if the dormant p abs tile x is greater than or equal to the min tile x, which I'll have to compute, right, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, something like this. I guess I can do this as a max tile x.
I think I have the brain power to do this. Why he's comparing it against a min tile x, but where did those come from? I do not know. Like it's gonna be on the new camera P. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly where we're going with this. Actually, it looks like he's doing this way, or let's just stick to doing it this way. I know what's going on. It's okay if it looks a little bit different. Once again, I wrote my loop wrong. Okay. Now let's see where he's going to get these values from, because I have no idea.
Next on the y. There we go. So if I do this check and basically say, when I loop over the dormant entities, if they are inside the rectangular region, tile map-wise, then we're going to move them into high, right? Min tile y. Min tile, max tile x, max tile y. And what I can do here is just say that essentially these are actually going to be computed off the same stuff that this is, right? Essentially what I have here is a tile span x and a tile span y. This is our tile span x, right? And this is our tile span y, which is how big that camera view actually is. Not the actual visible camera, but sort of the apron, that whole area that we want to calculate. And so the min tile...
Okay, so I guess I should have done something like that to begin with. I don't know. But tile span x is just going to be that value. And then what am I doing? Why did I do that? Good thing we're getting to the end here, because the brain is just fragmenting with every line that I write. And then this is going to be like this. I guess we can just leave this kind of broken out like this. This is fine. Tile span X, and then over here, oh. You want these to be F32s. That's okay. And all of these can probably just go on one line. Well, I guess we'll see how he intends to calculate them first.
Tile X is just going to be the negative of that, right? And the positive there, and right, tile span Y, like so on. Yeah, so I think that is, and it's half of this, right? So it's a half size. So I believe that's correct. With who should be brought in, who should be brought into the system. So now, what are you complaining about? Unary minus. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. My bad. I admit that. So this is going to be camera bounds. New camera P abs tile X minus, because this is based off of where the camera actually is, obviously, plus. So that's actually what I wanted. Now again, there's a little bit of a bug here that really doesn't affect us much, but remember, we're not.
Okay. Right. So okay, I understand where this is coming from now. Because we're going and changing the entity residence based on whether it comes within the bounds of the camera's apron, as he would put it. So maybe I'll just do all of these on their own line. Because now we got a whole lot more stuff going on. New camera P, what is that, abs tile, X, and then same thing, but in the positive direction. Both these are Y. Yeah. And that looks pretty good. Right? We just got to fix these mismatch type errors. So, oh. Okay, instead of doing this way, whoops, I'm gonna do this way. Actually, does it matter? Is it still gonna, yeah, it still has a problem. You've still got a problem with me. That's fine. We'll cast them to F32s here, and then down here, I'll make them U32s. And now the walls should pop right in, or not. Huh. It's because we don't set the camera anywhere else, is my guess. We only set the camera if there is an entity. So we, we're kind of still right where we started, but it just means we need to set the camera up front, I think.
Supposed to be wrapping, and we will be wrapping here because we haven't moved the world to the center yet.
It'd be cool to switch between these camera types, like a single tile map gets the static camera, and another bigger room is made of 4 tile maps, so you get this camera. Yeah, like I'm trying to think. It's interesting because building it all from scratch, right? Not that we're doing it completely from scratch in the way that Casey defines it, but we're doing it from scratch, and that we're building like all of the systems from scratch, regardless of whether we write, you know, all of the utilities and things like that on our own. But the system itself, seeing how it's put together, it does give you these ideas, right? It makes you think about these things, and that's kind of what I like about following this series, is giving me all of this stuff to think about as I get deeper and deeper, and like, what kind of game do I want to make? I have no idea, right? It feels like it's kind of a pretty consequential thing to, and like I can't think of any examples of other games that do this off the top of my head, right? But I know that I played games where they play with the camera like that, you know, where you're in a situation gameplay wise where the camera kind of needs to really pull back because there's a lot of stuff going on, and they want you to be able to see the whole scope of a battle or something like that, and make that like a game design decision where you force the player to look at, you know, what you want them to look at and the way that you want them to look at it, whether it's you're smooth scrolling or you're doing the you know, kind of fixed room width and height kind of scrolling. Like that's a very different impact on the feel of everything, right? Versus when, let's just say I'm gonna use Skyrim or any open world game where like you can have the first person camera and then you can have like the third person view camera, and then you can kind of zoom in and out. Like instead of getting the player control, you just tell them, this is how you're gonna play my game, by forcing the camera angle on them that you want them to have. And you know what? It's interesting that I'm even talking about this right now, because I remember very specifically, I think, gosh, I might be getting the game wrong, but it might be like Resident Evil 2 versus like the remake, where you have complete control over the camera, right? So you can always see in the direction that you want to look at as the player. But I think, and that was what they did with the remake, whereas the original one, you were forced, you know, walking down a hallway, you were stuck with that perspective. With, you know, whatever scene you were on, you could only see the game from that angle, and you had to play the game from that angle. And I guess the criticism that people had of the remaster for the choice they made there, and again, I could be getting the actual game wrong, but the criticism they were making, and maybe they were right to make this, is that it changes the feel of the game, right? If you can look freely in any direction that you want in a horror game, there's an element of that. If you use that freedom to hype up the horror more, then that's good, right? Like I'm thinking of PT, where depending on where you were freely looking at any point in time, that could actually make the experience that much more terrifying, because you might not be paying attention to the scary thing that's happening over here, but on another time you might be. But in that case, with Resident Evil, like the reason why it made it less scary to be able to freely look wherever you want, right, is because now you could confront the enemy, you know, the zombie, whatever it is, on your own terms. Whereas if you're forced into this angle where the camera is just showing you this one perspective, it makes it more claustrophobic and it makes you more anxious. So that kind of actually hypes up the horror element. It's interesting just how something as small as the camera angle, seemingly small, can actually have a big impact on that stuff.
So there's a little bit of bug here, but I don't think it affects us yet, so we don't really have to worry too much about it. Oops, got to put those ands in there. There we go. And so now I think we would be correct. Yeah, so there we go. Well, of course, I don't actually know yet, because I have to call that set camera call at the start of the game as well. So what we want to do, we want to do that set camera somewhere where you can force it to actually do the entity change. So what we want to do there is say, basically when we start the game, really, when we do this camera P, what we'd want to do is actually, you know, make the camera P be set this way, right? So what we'd want to do is say tile map position, camera, new camera P, right? And we'd want to set the new camera P abs tile X and abs tile Y, and then we want to set it that way, so that we set the.
Falling way behind because I was looking for this initialize arena call, and we actually do not use any of this, right? At some point I should probably just get rid of this, because it seems to me that our use of Odin's virtual arena buffer works just fine. So where are we doing that? That is over here. When we initialize it, using everything after what we're storing for the game state. Right? And then we just set the allocator for the context, and then we're off. Now, if we were to do this after, well, maybe it doesn't really matter. But if we were loading in these assets after making this assignment, I'm worried about, and this is something that, yeah, this is another one of those things that's like more Odin specific that I had to think pretty hard about to make sure I was doing the right thing. But I just want to be careful, because after this point, we only want to be making allocations with our game memory, right? And I'm pretty sure that is what Casey does. I don't think we ever make any sort of, you know, asset loading calls or anything like that after this point. But it's something that I just haven't been reminding myself of lately, and so I want to make sure that I just keep that in mind, because it could create a problem for me if I forget it, and then I run into a bug and I'm like, why is that happening? It'll have something to do with allocation if anything does come up. So anyway, down here, I think after, well, he's actually calling it up here before that. I think he's gonna have to move that around, or maybe not, actually. I'll just go ahead and declare that tile map position, and then there you go, that initial set camera call. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be moved down out of here. Maybe this is just fine. And then maybe now we'll get those walls up front. Or we'll just crash, you know, that can happen too. Oh, I didn't set this. Yeah. Now will work. Or not.
We set the camera exactly that way. Now, I don't know why it's being set there, though. So I feel like all of this stuff should actually happen at the very end, so that everything gets moved in properly. What did I do? Missing,
so we did have to move it
yes,
out.
It is missing cycle. So that should actually get things initialized properly now at startup, I would think, but it still didn't. Why?
Well, can I do this without crashing? I can. Okay. So still not what we want, but Casey's on it. Oh, hey there, Kara. Thanks for stopping by.
Is that? So let's take a look at what happened there. I think I've typed too much code. Oops, that's the wrong set camera call. There we go. That's the one we actually want. So let's take a look at what happens here. We come through. There are no entities in the high set at the moment. Well, I guess there are. Oh, of course. What I should do here as well, although this is going to change fairly soon as well, I should do this as well. Say if game state entity residence entity index equals high. So we should only actually check the people who are in high, right? So there you go. And this is going to
slapping in a whole lot of little changes here at the end. So here, okay, he's just checking the residence at this index to make sure that it's high before we start doing stuff with it.
Be for the people who are dormant, and I believe, do we remember to actually set would be the other thing.
And I did just hear him a second ago. I guess he makes this decision a lot sooner. Did he already get rid of the idea of a low entity? Maybe he did. I wasn't paying attention, but I know he said something about it. said something about wanting to do that because he could feel that having 3 different kind of entity frequencies just wasn't really doing anything for us.
Dormant. Did we remember to actually set the wall to dormant or not? Yes, we did. Okay, so that's good. All right, but we're still not working properly, so we gotta debug this here. We've got about a minute left before the Q&A, just because.
I feel like I just missed something else important. Here. Okay, yeah. Right. So yeah, it seems I guess I still did not see. Yeah, he still hasn't gotten rid of that notion of a low entity, but he is just saying either you're dormant or you're not, either you're active or you're not, which just seems less complicated, simpler, and I don't see why. Like, you'd have to have a very good reason for doing that otherwise, right? You'd have to have a very good reason to have like one sort of region where the camera is, where entities are active and doing things, and then another region where they're kind of active but not really. Like, what gameplay reason would there be, right, for entities to be far enough off of camera to not be updated every frame, but still close enough to where you want to be polling them more frequently? Like, you wouldn't know that you need to do that until you had a specific reason to do it, I would think.
Did we remember to actually set the...
Oh, and then, yeah, no, that's all I did. Okay, so here we go.
Here, we've got about a minute left before the Q&A, just because the timer is still running 1 minute ahead. I gotta remember to fix that. So we come through here, and we shouldn't have any entities in high, right? So those should all get skipped, right? We should come down here, and we should compute these. So I wonder if this is our wrapping. Yeah, never mind. You know, I said the wrapping wouldn't bite us, and it totally did, right? It totally did. That's too bad. All right. So...
Oh, could that just be because he has this... I think this just might be because he's got a silly bug, which I don't think I have, right? Well, there's the wrapping that he just mentioned, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe that is part of why this is messed up, because... Yeah. Well, he's got this issue here where he's comparing... He's got this swapped, where he's checking the... Why... He's changing the residence to high if the entity is less than the min tile Y, which isn't right. But this value he's talking about here is wrapping over into the 4 billions because we're checking a few screens over. And maybe he's just going to clamp them. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Isn't performance the specific reason? Well, I mean, performance is the reason that you want to have the 2 different frequencies, right? Because we can't be updating all like 100,000 entities every single frame. That is a specific reason to have a difference at all, right? Otherwise, you would just have them all be active. But to have 3 different frequencies where you had another understanding, like a low frequency, meaning it's not completely inactive, but it's still doing it's doing more stuff. Basically, the low frequency entities would be doing more than the dormant ones, but still less than the active ones. And then and you'd have to wonder, like, what specific reason could I have for having entities not get pulled more frequently than the dormant ones, right? Because he was saying something like pull 1,000 of the dormant entities every frame and make them do things in the background, you know, update their movement and maybe collide with objects or pick up objects, like very small stuff. But just it would be done much less frequently. But then to have a slightly more active frequency, like it's hard to even reason about it, which is why I think it's good to back that out, unless you did have a very particular reason why you wanted to pull things more frequently than dormant, but not as much as high, which is why I think you decided to pull that out.
That's too bad. All right. So we do have the problem that we're on the edge of the world, so I think we're going to have to solve that, get that wrapping thing straightened out. So let's go ahead and say that we'll do that first thing tomorrow, where we'll go ahead and actually address the wrapping problem, because, you know, we've kind of done what we wanted to do in terms of splitting things up a little bit, and the next step is to get these things rolling through a nice, not having totally duplicate arrays for everything, and storing the guys more sensibly in the tile map anyway. So that'll kind of dovetail nicely with just going, okay, let's go into the tile map and actually make it, we'll actually make it store them sparsely so that we can start in the middle of the world instead of all the way at the end, like so. So yeah. So let's say that's what we'll do tomorrow. That'll be our thing. And so this will be our to-do to concentrate on tomorrow. All right. So let's go ahead and start the Q&A then.
I'm going to hang on just for a couple minutes here because somebody might point out this bug, and then I want to see if that's the only problem he has, in which case that's bad news for me because it means that I've got some other issue that explains why the walls aren't beaming in right away. And maybe if I look for that set camera call, yeah, I mean, this looks fine. I don't know. We'll see.
So if you could, let's see, CD, I got to set up my little thing here. If you could.
Gween Bean asks, is this email too? I do not understand what that question means.
Please prefix your questions with Q: so that I can see them, and please keep the questions to stuff that we have done today or that we will do, that we did on a previous one. If you want to ask stuff about like stuff we're going to do, or if you want to ask stuff about just totally off-topic questions, those are totally fine, but ask them during the pre-stream. So come about 15 minutes before the stream starts on any given day, and I answer all kinds of crazy questions then. Aren't some of the signs, they may well be. Someone's asking if some of the signs are wrong in the min-tile X. I put those in quite quickly. Yes, they are. But of course, the wrapping, we have a wrapping problem, whether those are right or wrong. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to help us here. These are all kinds of messed up, actually. So this is, if we actually want to do this, let's fix that. So we've got min-tile X, max-tile X, min-tile Y, max-tile Y, abs-tile X, abs-tile X, abs-tile Y. Okay, so the min is the abs-tile X minus the half span. This should be minus the half span of Y. So these are all Y's. Min, abs-tile Y. Yeah, there we go. All right. But again, I think we're still not gonna. Yeah, it still isn't gonna work because of the wrapping problem. So, but yes, good catch. That was wrong. We just, you know.
He's still got. So he was just fixing some of these assignments, but he's still got this problem where these two comparisons are switched. And I'm hoping that when he fixes those, he still doesn't have this working right. Because if he does, then I'm in trouble. And I have another bug to track down.
What does internal modifier, which is applied to the set camera function? I mean, what is the difference between non-static and static function? So basically, it may seem a little bit like Voodoo, and it is, I guess, a little bit like Voodoo because of the Unity build, but I can explain that. So internal is just a pound define that I pound defined to static. So it's the same as saying static, which obviously you already knew because you put that into the question. So the question is, why am I defining these functions as static? And the answer is because any...
So I'm going to jump ahead here because I'm running pretty low on time. I want to see if him fixing this really small thing actually gets his working the way it should.
That's doing what I thought I was doing in my head. So we'll see. So I believe that's actually more correct now. I was doing in my head. Actually correct, right? Yes.
Okay, so this is actually not even... So this... Maybe he changes this elsewise already at this point in the Q&A. But there's actually something else.
That's where he wants to be. Plus whatever we're trying to do. That's where desired position. Right? Because that's doing what I thought I was...
Okay, never mind. So actually, well, I don't know if this is going to be the issue, but it looks like it's not going to come up until tomorrow, which is fine. So I will, because he still doesn't have it fixed. Like, this is towards the end of the Q&A, and you know, when the game starts up, he's still got no walls popping in. So I'm a little worried that he's going to kick this off tomorrow and he's going to fix this bug and then it's going to work. I guess I should sit with this anyways and make sure I understand what's happening here. But it sure seems to me that when we call set camera, that, well, when we do call set camera, we haven't added any walls, right? Or did we? Yeah, actually, I think we did. So never mind. Yeah. So this add wall call happens, and then when we set the camera, it should bring all those walls. Yeah, it should bring them all into an active state, and they should all pop in. Oh, man. I might have something else going on here. So I'm going to have to look into that. And I'll probably skim ahead in tomorrow's code, because I don't want to get hung up on this bug on stream for some exorbitant amount of time tomorrow. I just want to hit the ground running and have us... Oh, it looks like he's going to get rid of dormant. Not, because that's what the title of tomorrow's day is. Remove the dormant entity concept. So he's just going to have high and low instead of high and dormant, which I guess makes a little bit more sense. But same idea. We're going to have just two phases that an entity could be in. They'll either be, you know, pulled very infrequently and outside of the bounds of the camera apron that we care about, and then we'll have entities that are inside of that bounds and that are being pulled every frame. So, yeah, kind of leaving it on a bit of a suspenseful note, but I'll figure it out. And if there is a bug, I'll go over it tomorrow. But otherwise, it's looking good. We have our walls back. And we're getting closer and closer, one day closer. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will